Freddie says that every town has an Elm Street, but I think very, very few towns have a Fear Street.
What the hell?
This is exactly why you have no friends.
Look, some gal killed a bunch of people at the mall last night.
Holy shit.
Hey everybody, Lindsay here, and this is my review for Fear Street 1994. Fear Street. Fear Street were a series of books by R.L. Stine that were wildly popular in the 90s. I loved Fear Street when I was in middle school and high school. I read them all the time. I didn't read Christopher Pike. I didn't do Goosebumps. I loved Fear Street. Somewhere in this house, in a box, probably in the basement, are several Fear Street books that I still own. My favorites were the Fear Street Saga, and also the Christmas themed books were always a hoot. But they all had to deal with teenagers and a killer or a ghost or something horrible happening in the town of Shadyside. And I always really loved the covers. They reminded me a lot of VHS covers, some of them. I would equate them to like YA trashy romance novels, but instead of romance, it's horror. So I was really excited when Netflix announced that they were doing a Fear Street Trilogy. Of course, they are inspired by the books, but they're not based on any specific book or the Fear Street Saga or anything like that. I'm sure they possibly took bits and pieces here and there from a few books, but it's not a straight adaptation of anything. And the first one that Netflix put out is the 1994 one. Each of the three films takes place at a different time period, and this one takes place in 1994. It's hard to kind of recap the basic storyline of this because there's a lot going on. Pretty much what's going on is there's a witch that's cursed the town, and she'll possess people and make them go crazy and kill a bunch of people. Overall, I have very mixed feelings about this first movie. Overall, I'm kind of disappointed in it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to.
There's no angry, dead witch. The only thing that made him go crazy is this town.
Alright, first I'm going to talk about a few things that I did like, and then we're going to get into what I didn't like. So, what I did like about this movie. I liked the opening stinger. It was very 90s. It reminded me a lot of Scream, and there were a lot of 90s horror film references in this. We also got a lot of stuff from I Know What You Did Last Summer. There was many Jaws references for some reason, which I can appreciate. I liked a lot of the settings that they had. They had the mall, they had the grocery store, they had the school. Those are always fun horror environments to play around in. They had some really, really cool deaths. My favorite, of course, was the cake cutter. That was the best death. It happened to one of the best characters, but it was a really, really cool death. I liked some of the music in it. It was very, very 90s. And I like that there's a mystery to solve with what's going on. It's not just, okay, this killer is after us and we just have to survive. It's like, no, we have to figure this shit out so that we can stop it. I like all the stuff with the witch and the different killers coming back, and allusions to other time periods where this kind of stuff went on, and that some of the adults in the town have experienced it as well when they were kids, because we get that scene with the sheriff where he sticks the note under somebody's door that says it's happening again, and they call the lady who survived the camp massacre back in the late 70s, which is going to be the focus of the second movie. I like all that stuff. It's very, it's a big homage to horror tropes, not done in a tired way. It's paying homage to them.
Maybe we are doomed.
Alright, now I'm going to get into what I didn't like, and there was quite a bit that I didn't care for in this film. I was slightly disappointed by how everything turned out. I mean, overall, I was entertained by it, but there was a lot of things that I just didn't care for personally. The first thing is, in the first 10 minutes, we're hit with 10 different songs from the 90s, and I don't think... There were a few of them that did not come out by 1994. I think a few of them came out later, which big deal, but it was a lot. And you could say that that's an homage to some 90s movies where, you know, every character introduction is accompanied by a song, but it was a bit much in this film. It was quite a bit. And through a majority of this film, I didn't really get a 90s vibe. Yes, they plunk some things in, like the songs, the technology, of course, with some of the computers. The brother, Josh, is chatting with someone on an Amiga 2000. Some of the fashion fits, but I was just not getting a 90s feel at all. Especially not an early 90s vibe. If I was getting a 90s vibe at all, it was more late 90s. And of course I didn't want them to do this stereotypical, ooh, remember the 90s, like they do with a lot of 80s stuff. But I really didn't get a lot of, oh, we're in 1994. And you can do a period piece based on a decade that looks like it was shot in that decade. Just look at The House of the Devil. I mean, that looks like it was shot in the 70s. This does not look like it's taking place in the 90s to me. And probably the biggest thing that I didn't enjoy about this film was the main character. I could not identify with her. I could not empathize with her. I did not really care about her. And the reason for that is, for a majority of the film, at least the first half, she's just angry. She's just kind of a raging bitch to everyone about everything. And you could say, oh, it's the 90s angst. It's like, no, she's just being a bitch.
Normal bitches don't bleed black blood.
There's some allusions as to why, because, I mean, she lives in this town where all this stuff happens, and everybody's poor, and her father works all the time, and when he's not working, all he does is get drunk. But there's only kind of allusions to that. We see her picking up a bunch of beer cans, and there's a few throwaway lines about it, but we never see how she interacts with him or whatever. And I didn't get much of a character from her, except that she's mad and she really, really likes this girl. And that's it. And as far as her girlfriend, her character is one of the more milquetoast characters I've seen in a film lately. There's just nothing to her. I don't understand why our main character is so in love with her or obsessed with her, or wants to be around her so much. I don't get it. There was nothing special about her. There was nothing dynamic about her. There was nothing about her for us to make us care about her or care about their relationship. I didn't give a shit.
Maybe we are doomed.
If you think of other main characters in horror movies, especially in the 90s, you have Neve Campbell in Scream. You have Jennifer Love Hewitt in I Know What You Did Last Summer. I mean, they're not completely fleshed out, really, really dynamic characters, but they're not one-dimensional either. And we see them interact with so many other people, so we understand a little bit more about their character and what their motivations are and why they have those motivations. In this film, this main character does not have that, other than I like this girl.
She was so sexy, but so crazy.
The characters I did care about were Josh and Kate and the other kid, Martin? Was that his name? Martin? I don't know. The comic relief kid.
The dude was wearing a Halloween skull mask. How is that not fun?
They were actually interesting. They had more going on than, oh, I love this girl. Oh, I like this girl so much that I'm willing to sacrifice other people for her. And at the end, I'm like, this girl is worth all this. Why? Why? You've shown us nothing to make this relationship worth all of this.
Guys, I think there's someone in the woods.
They were more enjoyable characters. They were better characters in my opinion. I cared what happened to them, especially Josh and Kate. I loved their little budding romance that they had. And I really like the character of Josh because he's this nerd who's on the computer all day and chatting with people, and he's already done all this investigation stuff, and he's kind of a wallflower. Him I could relate to. Him I could see in that time period. He was a lot more interesting. I cared whether he lived or died. I didn't care about Dina and Sam. I didn't. I just didn't. And I was getting worried towards the end when they went to the grocery store to do their second setup, where they were gonna kill Sam by making her overdose with a bunch of pills. I was like, they need to start killing people off, because this is a horror movie. It's rated R. Not everyone can survive this. People need to start getting picked off here. And luckily a few of them did. Kate's death was probably the best, even though I didn't want her to die, and I cared if she lived or not, but she had the best death. It was pretty awesome with that cake cutter. I appreciated that death a lot. Martin, if that's his character's name, I don't remember, he was dispatched of pretty unceremoniously with an axe to the head, but again, he needed to die. It's a horror movie, a rated R horror movie. People need to die. And then we get to the end where it turns out that everything they did was really for nothing, because Sam's evidently possibly possessed by the witch. I mean, they set up a lot of stuff that wasn't answered, but this is just the first film. So I have greater expectations or hopes for the second and third film. Hopefully it's a little better. We get some better characters. But if it's gonna be the Dina and Sam show through this whole thing, I've already kind of lost interest. Hopefully they flesh them out a little more in the second and third movie, and maybe I'll care a little more. But this first introduction to them was a letdown. But I do like the overall concept of this. We are getting this huge mashup or mixtape, if you will, of different kinds of horror and different kinds of horror characters, and I can really appreciate that. I mean, we've got the camp killer, the nameless, faceless stalker slasher guy. You have the more supernatural elements and witchcraft with Sarah Fire or Fear. So that stuff I did like, and I'm hoping it's expanded upon in the next couple movies, because after watching this first one, I just don't know. And I also liked that Maya Hawke was the opening girl. That was a cool little touch. She did a good job. But that's not what a B. Dalton bookstore looked like at all. And that store that the kid works in at the beginning, where she hides with all the blacklight posters and weird sex stuff, that's totally a Spencer Gifts. I used to work at Spencer Gifts when I was in high school, and that was a Spencer Gifts. I don't think maybe they just didn't get the rights to put Spencer Gifts on the storefront, but that's a Spencer Gifts. Well, that's gonna do it for my review of the first installment of the Fear Street saga on Netflix. Hopefully my reviews for the next two will be a little more positive. But that is going to do it for this video. So until next time, this is Lindsay signing off. I'll check you later.